and welcome to ATARC's 2021 Cloud Virtual Summit. For those who do not know me, my name is Kirsten Patton, and I am one of the working group managers here at ATARC. ATARC stands for the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center. We are a nonprofit that facilitates collaboration between government, industry, and academia in order to accelerate technology modernization initiatives. We provide ongoing opportunities for cross-agency collaboration through on-site interaction, learning, and market research. Thank you to our partners at Snowflake, Pure Storage, Microfocus Government Solutions, Denodo, Acquia, Red Hat, and Splunk. I would also like to thank our amazing panelists and moderators for today's event. Additionally, I would like to thank you all for joining us. Today will be a day full of action-packed panels all surrounding cloud in the federal space. We hope you enjoy this great and informative day. Up first, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Paul Puckett. Paul is the director in the ECMO CIO G6 in the United States Army. Paul, over to you.
Thanks so much, Kirsten. And hey there, thanks for spending some time with me today. So as Kirsten said, my name is Paul Puckett. I'm the director of the Enterprise Cloud Management Office. The Army stood up the ECMO just a little bit over a year ago because they realized they needed a change in the direction of the Army in the adoption of cloud if they were going to deliver on their digital modernization strategy. So when it comes to a keynote and having the first 15 minutes of your lives here, I hope that you take something from this that drives action. So if you're in the government, uniformed personnel, civilian, hopefully some of our methodology and how we're driving after the cloud is something that you could use and learn from. And if maybe you need some help in trying to solve some of the challenges of where you are today, please reach out to me and my team. You can email us at armycloud@mail.mil. We're also on Teams as well. We've got a public channel. And then also you can just shoot me a message. So we're here to help. And really what we've tried to strive to deliver over the last year is to demonstrate that we're here to solve problems and deliver outcomes. You know, oftentimes when you think about the CIO, a lot of times you think about just the policy and governance side of the house. And so that was realized from day one. And so when the ECMO was stood up, I had some roles and responsibilities that were a little bit outside of the norm. And that was really to drive action, to drive outcomes, and deliver value for the Army. So a little bit of our story. And when I was chatting with ATARC before this, they wanted to say of kind of, you know, what 2020 has meant for the Army when it comes to adopting cloud with all of the challenges of COVID. And I've talked about this before, but I'll weave it in so you guys can see where we're going in 2021. But prior to the ECMO, the Army's adoption of the cloud was really a leave the data center, move to the cloud type of initiative. It was really deeper than that. The metric of success was whether you were just kind of in the cloud. There was no deeper thought as to the people and the processes and the technologies that we're bringing to bear here when we think about the world of cloud computing and the opportunities that it offers us and ways for us to reimagine ourselves. And so really job number one was to drive a new strategy when it came to adopting cloud. And so drove a methodology that needed to be aligned to the actual effectiveness and efficiency that cloud can provide us so that we can be better stewards of how we build IT systems, better stewards of taxpayer money, but we can also deliver and enhance outcomes for the soldiers that need to fight and win every single day. So the first thing was really a cloud strategy. We put that together in a cloud plan. It's been out for quite some time, so you can go and read that. And the whole entire point of the cloud plan was to give a why of purpose and a why of movement for the Army. We weren't where we needed to be in modern technology. In addition to that, we also started to drive after a few things that the Army wasn't doing that we needed to do if we wanted to adopt cloud at scale. And first and foremost, it's actually providing a secure cloud environment that the Army can move into. A lot of the movement to the Army to date prior to the ECMO were kind of these onesie-twosie initiatives that were each delivering the secure components of a cloud aligned to the Cloud Security Requirements Guide, and they were doing it on their own for themselves. And we realized, hey, we can build this once for many. And so we drove the initiative in a partnership with the Army Analytics Group to deliver C-Army. And C-Army is our secure global cloud environment that allows the Army to move at speed into a secure cloud so they can focus on delivering applications and value for their mission. They don't have to worry about managing secure infrastructure. And so this initiative around common services is really a key component. We've seen crazy, essentially, timelines and numbers when it comes to cost avoidance as well as people moving into the cloud, simply because there's a team that's already resourced and charged to deliver a secure cloud ecosystem for them to move into. And so we think that that's just paramount. That's first and foremost, is when you're talking about adopting cloud at scale, you need people to handle something as a service that takes care of some of those enterprise needs, so that people can focus on their actual mission. And so our CRME team, our cloud services team, is charged with delivering great common shared services within a secure cloud ecosystem that their customers love using, so that their customers can focus on the mission for the Army. So that's first and foremost. The second thing that we leaned into pretty heavily is this notion of building up people when it comes to the skill sets that we need in order to be the ones that are able to compete and win with modern technology. And so in a partnership with Futures Command, we've got the software factory that's standing up. And so this is a collaborative effort between my office and theirs. And so we're delivering that DevSecOps ecosystem, and they're focusing on sourcing talent across the Army so that we can train and upskill soldiers that understand how to compete and win by delivering software for the Army mission. What's really important about that, what you need to think about in your cloud journey as well, is you have to have the people to follow behind you. You have to lay a path so that this is repeatable. And when I say sustainable, sustainable in the pace and the adoption that we need. We need to have people that understand how to compete and win with cloud computing technology that can actually drive your mission forward. And that's what we're focused on as well. And so wonderful initiative out of AFC and the software factory. Essentially that stood up just a little bit ago at the beginning of January. We've already got the first application in operational testing today and shortly getting after an ATO. So you've got to get after the people, you've got to get after the ecosystem, but most importantly, and you'll see this reflected in the Army's initiative with our data and cloud execution order, as well as our data plan, is you have to understand what data you have if you want to be able to compete and win in the information age. And so first and foremost is really starting to see yourself. And this was a major initiative started back in 2019, carried on in 2020, and then now into 21, where we need to see what data we have. We need to actually go and do the hard work of understanding what is good data, where it's coming from, who we're sending data to, what formats things are being shared, and what interfaces are established between these systems, or more importantly, what interfaces are not and need to be, so that we can actually start to share data in real time. And so this initiative is really being driven out of our Chief Data Officer, Dr. Dave Markowitz. But we've got a whole entire ecosystem of senior leaders across the Army that track every single 2 weeks our progress on these initiatives. And that's really important, is senior leader buy-in. And thankfully, we've had that from day one, because Army senior leaders acknowledge it is an imperative for us to see ourselves, to see our data, and that it's the value of our data and our ability to derive good information and make good decisions at the speed of relevance if we are going to be competitive in this new world that we live in. So those things in mind, as you can imagine, COVID kind of threw a few people for the loop. I think for those of us in the world of IT, maybe it helped us kind of bolster our arguments, if you will. For the longest time, we've been talking about essentially fragile IT systems and essentially this closed ecosystem that we find within the DoD. And what people realized when everyone was forced to work from home from their personal devices is it's really hard to do your job in a remote setting. So thankfully, major initiatives around teams started to connect people and allow people to collaborate, but it really opened up this aha moment that the future of work is really this distributed architecture of people. And so our ability to be secure within that distributed architecture and our ability to function and function well to be able to fight and win is actually paramount. And so this, thankfully, was an aha moment across senior leaders, really across the DoD. And we see that in evidence of how people are working towards to start to open up that ecosystem, how we can start to assert essentially a new zero trust architecture where it doesn't really matter if you're in the network. We want to be able to understand who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it. So to be able to have that pulse on that ecosystem is absolutely critical. So what we saw in 20 is, while it may be challenging to stand up a brand new team and a brand new office in a distributed telework manner, is we actually had great arguments for what we were doing and why we were doing it, which meant that we had just absolutely room to run. So for the Army in 2020, really what it was is proving out the methodology and proving out the plan that we had. And so we were able to demonstrate a number of outcomes in 2020 with Sea Army. We were able to accelerate the adoption of our enterprise resource planning movement into the cloud and their modernization efforts. We were able to have a major cost avoidance there as well by the fact that we were reusing services that already existed rather than duplicating them. We also recently worked towards collapsing the Army Resource Cloud, essentially a major initiative with our financial teams to start to consolidate their efforts as well into Sea Army. And now we're starting to see more and more customers that are starting to build. We have an initiative born out of 18th Airborne Corps that's currently building their RIFMIS application. It's a rangefinder optimization tool born out of one of their innovation challenges that they had just a few months ago. So major initiatives, major movement that we see, and I would argue that if you're trying to do the same thing within your ecosystem, first and foremost is you need senior leader buy-in to understand. That you really need to understand the why of purpose and the why of movement. And when I say that, go look into Simon Wardley and his mapping initiative. The why of purpose is this vision, this place you need to be. And the why of movement is sometimes hard, but it's acknowledging where you are in that journey and that you have a place that you need to go because you're not there yet. And so looking back on 2020, we were able to prove a lot of wonderful outcomes, but now looking forward into 2021, it's about putting all of the pieces in place to actually do this at scale. The Army is large, our architecture is complex. We are a global fighting force, which means that our common services need to be a global secure platform. And so that initiative is already underway for how we bring the value of Sea Army into the tactical footprint with our partnerships in PEO C3T and beyond. And so as we start to expand into 21, we see major growth for us. So there's a lot of acquisitions that you probably see out on the streets, a number of RFIs that have been put out. And so we expect 21 to be a lively year when it comes to those initiatives. But a few things that I'll highlight there, especially if you're on a similar journey. And this gets into the traditional role of the CIO, but from a policy and governance perspective is we want to ensure all new contracts are structured in a way that actually complement the vision of the Army and where we're trying to go. We want to have systems that are built in an open architecture. We want to have systems that have these interfaces that are standardized. We want an ability to actually share data in real time. And we want to hold people accountable to doing that from day one. And so we worked with DASA-P when it came to the procurement and the language that we need for all new contracts. Hey, you're going to be leveraging common shared services. So we want you to start to design to this Army enterprise ecosystem. Hey, if you're going to be writing code with our money, we want to make sure that that code is available to the Army so that we can share it with the community and we can build on that. If you're going to be storing data, we want to ensure that your interfaces are open. We want to make sure that we can actually share data between these new services. And so we're driving toward this more modular open architecture across the Army. And we've got to reflect that in our policy as well. So we talk about that essentially being no new bad. And this really gets to where you're trying to go and just essentially how hard you're going to drive in that new direction. I'll actually quote a friend of mine, Alex, shot an email earlier on today. We were just talking about some of the initiatives moving into Sea Army, and his only response was burn the ships. With any of you know the old Cortez story of essentially burning the ships, we're not going back. We're only moving forward, and precisely that is what the Army is doing. So we see cloud as a paramount foundational effort when it comes to our digital modernization strategy. And we see that there's, quite frankly, no going back. Our first focus is on our people. We've got the talent and the skill set. We've got the right organizational leadership that understands that talent to actually empower them to take us into the future. So a lot of this is getting leaders that understand, hey, I'm not going to solve this problem with just more people. I'm going to think about our processes. I'm going to think about our technology. I'm going to think about the way that I can raise the skill set and the bar for my people so I can actually solve this problem in a way that's repeatable and sustainable, but doesn't take all of my people away. And I can start to focus on the greater value for the Army of how we're leveraging our data and how we're making decisions to fight and win. So that's essentially a little bit of our 2020 story and where we're looking for 2021. And really the thing that I would ask, if there's anything that we can do to help you, like I said at the start, is please reach out. What we're finding is, solving some of these problems that have already been solved We just want to work with each other to figure that out. We're all in a little bit of a nuance of a different journey, if you will. We all have perhaps a different business within the DoD, but there are ways that we can learn from each other. And so super thankful for all the collaborators that I've been fortunate to have across the Army. Nothing that eCMO has done successfully has been alone. And so also looking out for anyone across the DoD as well. If you have any issues, please reach out. And then finally, for the world of the vendors side of the house, I've said this before, is help us understand truly what our problems are. Spend that time with us to start to dive deep with us. There's maybe some ways that we look at a challenge, we're really not actually seeing the root cause of that challenge. And so just want to encourage you to reach out to me and my team, but help us, if we can help you, try and translate essentially what the Army opportunity is, and if you can help us understand what the real challenges might be if we want to achieve that opportunity. So those are my 15 minutes. I hope something in that has been of value to you guys. So with that, Kirsten, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thanks, Paul. We really appreciate you kicking us off with that keynote. So thank you so much. I would like to now introduce the first emerging technology talk of the day. For this, we'll be hearing from Paul Horan. Paul is the Principal Sales Engineer for Snowflake Federal. Over to you, Paul.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. I'd like to continue the themes that our previous speaker, another Paul, was actually speaking about. You heard him mention themes of efficiency, big data efficiency, operating at scale, sharing data in real time, and all of that without sacrificing security and governance over your big data platform. And that's what Snowflake is all about. I've got a handful of slides I'm going to walk through right now. Let me go ahead and share that screen and we'll just jump into the discussion. So I'm here to talk about Snowflake, the data cloud. Our company as a whole is relatively young, having been formed in 2012 and releasing our first GA product in late 2014, early 2015. Which is a blip in the lifespan of most technology, especially most database companies. But these were the four themes that our founders were chasing when they decided to start and build a database platform, a big data platform from the ground up. They wanted to develop it as a single platform, not having to spin out multiple copies of data, multiple disconnected data sets to offload performance. They wanted to be able to achieve the economy of scale that the cloud provided by giving you a single copy of that data, at the same time supporting multiple concurrent workloads against that single copy. That was the architectural goal. With a single platform to manage, you're eliminating data silos, you're condensing and simplifying the data architecture, which is a smaller attack vector and much more easier to secure and govern. It had to be a service, a near zero maintenance as a service. The platforms that were prevalent at that time had lots of knobs to turn, lots of dials to twist to achieve optimal performance. And our founders wanted to get away from all of that. And of course, it had to perform. It had to be faster than what was available in the marketplace today. And it had to deliver on what the cloud was promising, that unlimited scale, that unlimited performance in a zero maintenance service. And that's what Snowflake is. We position it this way, as the cloud data platform, not just a relational database designed for OLAP style workloads, but really all of the surrounding workflows and workloads that you need to provide for a big data platform. So if you want it to function as your data lake, if you want to load the raw data without having curating it first, you can do that in Snowflake. If you want it to coexist with your existing file-based data lake, you can do that as well. But now you have a SQL-based interface to all of that raw, uncurated data. And then the data engineering tasks that you need to move that data along its journey from raw data to workable, actionable intelligence, all of those can now be implemented with simple SQL statements, to curate that data through its next stage of evolution and land in the data warehouse where it can be an analytics product for either your data science team driving very advanced intelligence out of that data, or whether it's simply data applications providing dashboards or templates and things like that, insights into that data. And then we'll talk about data exchange, data sharing in real time using the Snowflake Cloud Data Platform. But the thing to notice from this slide, the takeaway here, is that it's a single integrated platform. It's cloud agnostic. It's the same experience across the 3 major cloud vendors. It provides that true end-to-end experience, with the goal being get the data from the left-hand side of the screen to the right-hand side of the screen with the least amount of friction and the least exposure to malicious intent as possible. And that's the Snowflake Cloud Data Platform. I'm going to transition right now and talk about how it's built. How did we deliver this? What is the underlying architecture of Snowflake? It's important to know that Snowflake is not software that you download and install into your on-premises environment. It's not software you download and install into your cloud environment. It is a fully managed SaaS platform, not unlike Salesforce or Okta. It is a multi-tenant service that lives in one of the 3 major cloud vendors. We've broken the slide down to this layered approach so that you can understand how it's really designed from the ground up. At the very basic level is the cloud agnostic layer. What this allows us to do is abstract away all of the technical differences of working across the 3 major cloud providers, so that you as an administrator, you as a developer, don't have to have intimate knowledge of the underpinnings of AWS versus Azure. We implement a lot of what we do in a very simple t-shirt size analogy. So you're working with things like smalls and extra smalls, as opposed to the 70 or so different node types that AWS provides. So that insulates you from all of that technical jargon, at the same time providing a consistent service, a consistent UI, a consistent price point, and a consistent SLA across the 3 major cloud vendors. At the next layer up is the centralized storage. If you take away one thing from this slide, understand that Snowflake was the first to really separate the compute layer from the storage layer to allow them to scale independently. Snowflake stores our customers' data in the underlying cloud provider's block storage service. So it's Amazon S3, it's Azure Blob. And we do that for a very specific reason. Those services are already designed to support high concurrent access. They already know how to deal with high levels of concurrency. They're very resilient in that they're striped across all 3 availability zones in a region. So it's redundant and resilient. And it is the lowest cost, most efficient storage medium for that type of data. It's important to know that a Snowflake customer does not access their data down at the physical storage level. Your interface to your own data is through the relational model. So running SQL statements against tables and views. You build your tables, you load your data, you run your queries, and we manage all of the underlying aspects of the physical storage of the data. We manage the compression, we manage the encryption, we rotate encryption keys on a regular basis. We guarantee the security of the physical storage of your data. At the next layer out, at the multi-cluster compute layer, what's going on here? This is the piece that you are in control of as the customer. These are the clusters of compute nodes that get spun up to actually execute the SQL of your queries on behalf of your customers that are running dashboards or data science programs, okay? These are, again, implemented in a very simple t-shirt size analogy. So for light workloads, you might target a single node extra small or a 2-node small. For medium-sized workloads, you can go after an 8-node large or a 16-node XL. And then for big, massive ETL jobs, you might want to throw a 128 node 4XL at the problem. Snowflake is responsible for starting those clusters up when they're needed, running them as long as there's work for them to do, and shutting them down to avoid idle time. What this means is you're actually mirroring your demand curve in real time. There's no wasted cycles. You don't spin up excess resources in advance of a spike in demand. Snowflake can recognize that peak coming and provision extra resources to deal with it in real time. And then on the back end, when that demand subsides, it spins those clusters out of existence. With per second billing at the compute layer, you're only paying for that compute resource while it's up and running. The analogy I use there is always the refrigerator door. The light's only on when the door's open. When you shut the door, the light goes off. Well, that light is how we manage that multi-cluster compute layer. We're only billing you for that compute resource while it's hot, while it's up and running and allocated to your account. And then in the teal layer around the edge, well, that's the cloud services layer. That's the brains of the service. So there's one of these in every cloud region that we currently support, which I think we're up to 24 across the 3 major cloud vendors. We do have 2 FedRAMP moderate approved deployments, one in Amazon East in the commercial cloud region. We have a FedRAMP approved deployment, and we're also in Microsoft Azure for government. So those are our 2 FedRAMP moderate deployments today, but we're available around the globe across the 3 different cloud platforms. But at the cloud services layer, that's where it's managing things like user and sessions and managing transactional consistency of your databases, keeping track of all of the metadata, the business metadata about what's going on down in the storage and who owns what files, and all of that is happening at that layer. And then we're managing sharing and collaboration as well. And I'm going to talk about that right now. How we do sharing, data sharing in Snowflake is not file-based. You don't extract data from your platform, compress it, encrypt it, and give it to a consumer as a disconnected data set. What happens in Snowflake, if you are a data provider and you have one or more consumers that want access to that data, you can go into your Snowflake database live, real time, cherry pick out the tables and views that you want to designate as shareable, and grant those consumers their own Snowflake account, grant them read-only access directly into your database. Now, all of the DBAs in the room, probably your head just exploded because you increased the load in your platform and you've opened up a security hole. That's not what's happening here in Snowflake. You're essentially granting read-only access directly into your production Snowflake database. Your consumers are using their own compute clusters to query just the data that you've shared with them. All right, you're in total control as the provider over the content of the share. You're in control of which consumers are allowed to see which assets, and you can revoke that grant at any point in time. So data with Snowflake data sharing, the data never exfiltrates the Snowflake security boundary, and you maintain the security and the governance over your shared data assets. Now, we've taken this concept and built both a public marketplace on top of it, where data providers who want to monetize their data can share it to the larger Snowflake ecosystem. There's also a private version of that, where you as a single standalone organization can stand up your own internal exchange to allow just the subscribers that you want in to share, both bidirectionally share data sets with each other. So Snowflake as a data sharing platform is going to revolutionize the way the federal government collaborates on these data sets within this analytics end-to-end cloud platform. And with that, that's my 15 minutes. Thanks, and I can turn it back over to you. Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. Up next, we have another emerging technology talk. I would like to go ahead and introduce Seth Kinley. He is the Principal Systems Engineer over at Pure Storage. Seth, over to you.
Thank you, Kirsten. Let me get this started here. And thanks for having me. It's a tough act to follow with Paul. Let me get my screen share up and we'll talk about what Pure can bring to bear. So it's been outlined by the two Pauls beforehand that we have some challenges in this day and age. COVID, certainly brought out a bunch of them. But let's just go ahead and talk through the silos, the complexity, high management costs, cloud portability, performance, and 3 to 5 year replacements. Each one of these, a silo, right, maybe a silo of excellence, depending on how you look at it, is still a silo. We have lots to do to combat it, right? Specialized hardware, esoteric management, people that have that job solely because they're the only ones that can, right? And that sort of leads us into complexity, right? The more complex it is, the less chance you have for success. Science projects oftentimes aren't reproducible, right? And then with it being complex, you get high management costs or high personnel costs. It's not cheap to do things the first time, especially if it hasn't been done before. And then once you've built it, how are you going to make it cloud portable or cloud ready, right? And then which cloud with what security metrics? How are you going to put it into something that doesn't have FedRAMP, for instance, or something that's certified at the wrong level? You have to keep all of these things in mind before you start this journey. And then certainly performance challenges, as outlined in with our last speaker, Paul. You don't necessarily want to pay all the time for things that you're not using. The ability to spin up and spin down, suspend and pause, that's paramount to success, right? Saving dollars, it's a big deal. Otherwise, we'd all just be spending willy-nilly. And then 3 to 5 years of replacement. What happens if a platform has built-in obsolescence? Well, that doesn't do anybody any favors. And we took all of these pillars, 6 of them, if you will, and we tried to distill it down into, well, can it be fixed? And we think that you absolutely can. And the means in which you're going to fix it is modernizing the data experience, right? It's not just a box. Now it's a solution. Now it's an architecture that's wholly ingrained. You have to think about every aspect of it to try and make it successful. And then you have to have the ability to sort of look at the lessons learned and try again. So the 4 pillars that we figured that it would make the most sense to sort of bring to market are that fast matters, right? Time to results, whether it be an analytics play, whether it be long listing a directory or looking for malicious actors inside of a very deep file structure or looking at things real time. There are numerous reasons why you'd want it to be as fast as you can. So making it fast has to do with hardware. It has to do with correct protocols. It has to do with reinventing things that were basically meant for slower media. And then cloud everywhere. And cloud everywhere means both in telemetry data coming off of devices or being in AWS, being in Azure, being in GCP, or being in outposts or having snowballs, not to be confused with snowflakes. But you have to be able to have a cloud first approach. And usually that means having devices that have a rich API ecosystem, things that will freely speak to other devices, because let's face it, you can't get a one-stop, one size fits all device anymore. You just can't. So you have to be cloud first, you have to be API driven, and you have to have it be simple, because simple is smart. The easier it is for you to do and reproduce, the easier it is to automate and orchestrate, set it up and forget about it, quite frankly. So if you can spend the time and do the due diligence to make it go and then make it do work for you, not to personify these systems, but you're going to have more time to do what matters, right? A new project, a new task, potentially save time and money because they're one and the same. And you can move on. And then finally, a subscription to innovation, which we think means that you should get things as they're developed, quite frankly. At the speed of development, agility and puns aside, you should get things the moment that they go to market. Now, what that means is software innovation as well as hardware. Chipsets change, protocols change, interconnects change, everything changes. And you shouldn't have basically everything that your business or your mission relies on being on antiquated gear simply due to the fact that it's too monolithic or too hard to change, right? So those 4 pillars, fast matters, cloud everywhere, simple is smart, and subscription to innovation are what we look at as the modern data experience. None of these are independent. All of them work together to get you to the next goal, to get you to the next stage. If you don't believe us, you can take a peek from some of the people who have done it, who have bought in. and said, this has been successful. We've got Mercedes AMG Petronas for those race fans out there, Man AHL because everybody loves money, and ServiceNow because we've all opened probably a ticket or two this week. And those are just some of the success stories that we've had in the past. So once again, to reiterate, simple is smart, cloud everywhere, subscription to innovation, and finally, fast matters. Not to mention the fact that Pure is in the business of making some strategic acquisitions to help us solidify those pillars. In the fall, you saw that Pure acquired Portworx, and look for more public-facing documentation, shall we say, about that coming this spring. Looks like we got about a minute or two back, and I just want to go ahead and hand it back over or field some questions.
Thank you, Seth. Awesome presentation. We really appreciate it. Up next, we have one more emerging technology talk right before our first panel of the day. I would like to go ahead and introduce Kevin Hansen. He is the Chief Technology Officer over at Microfocus Government Solutions. Kevin, over to you. We're having a little bit of trouble hearing Kevin. So maybe we can just back up a little bit and then replay that. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kevin Hansen, Public Sector CTO for Microfocus Government Solutions. And at this Tech Talk, part of the ATARC 2021 Cloud Virtual Summit, we're going to talk about getting cloud smart with mainframe applications. And we'll review a modernization maturity model for core business logic and cover the migration path to cloud. So thank you for joining today. Let's get started. Now, before you start your journey to mainframe modernization and cloud migration, it's critically important that you take stock in the value your mainframe applications and systems deliver to your organization today. These are highly resilient systems that contain much of the intellectual property that's been developed to support your business functions over these last many decades. Only when you understand that value can you then plan and be successful with your mainframe modernization and cloud smart initiatives. There are a number of factors impacting the value your organization gets from mainframe applications and undermining your ability to modernize them. Without better understanding and planning to mitigate these challenges, modernization really becomes a leap of faith. These challenges, of course, are not new. These are often barriers to mainframe modernization initiatives and can be categorized into 4 areas: application complexity and volume, impacts of application change, limited subject matter expertise, and determining what to modernize. Without having full application understanding, how can you truly ensure success? So what are we to do to increase our understanding of large, complex mainframe applications? The GSA Application Rationalization Playbook addresses this topic head-on. Specifically, in Step 3, assess business value and technical fit. They suggest that application surveys are not enough to determine application complexity and dependencies. In fact, they recommend the use of commercial tools to help map and produce visualizations of their application dependencies and complexity. This, of course, is a much more complete and pragmatic analysis of mainframe applications and provide you with the information you need to be successful in your planning and modernization efforts. The GSA was not alone in their assessment. In fact, industry analysts from Gartner, IDC, Forrester all agree. Overcoming these challenges isn't easy, but you can be sure it is impossible without assistance, technology assistance. As Gardner put it, before modernizing applications, it's vital to use advanced complexity analysis tools. Every environment is different, of course, with its own set of unique challenges and complexity. But that is why application understanding technology and analysis is so critical to the success of your mainframe application modernization efforts. It helps you determine where the components are, what can be moved, what needs to be updated or modernized before it can be migrated. It provides a single source of truth for all of your modernization teams to understand the impacts of a particular change on the various components of the application, and helps avoid increasing the risk associated with making changes within the application. Application understanding technology is key to the planning of your mainframe application migration. Once you have a holistic view of the application, you can pragmatically approach modernizing each component, determining what modernization options are available and what its future state will be. This is where the Microfocus modernization maturity model can help. It's our framework for preparing, planning, and undertaking your modernization journey based on your own situation and your own needs. We break the maturity model into several lenses: infrastructure, application, IT process, management, and of course, people and culture. It's designed to help you build a roadmap for your future mainframe application state. Now that you better understand the value of the application, what makes up all its components, and what you'd like the future state of the application to be, you're in a much better position to make pragmatic and cloud smart decisions about your modernization and migration plan. Again, Microfocus breaks this into application lenses, process lenses, and infrastructure lenses, so that you're addressing each of the dependencies and holistically addressing costs, risks, and maintaining the value of the application all the way to its end state. We believe that we have a unique perspective on enterprise application modernization. We don't have a predetermined destination for your modernization journey, and we know that each mainframe application has to be treated differently. We also know that you can improve processes, improve quality, and especially improve your time to value without having to make changes to the intellectual property contained within these applications. By embracing the agility of new platforms and evolving these applications to make them available in new ways, it's possible to be cloud smart and migrate these applications to the cloud. Our modernization maturity model is a framework of best practices and vital considerations which help our customers and partners plan, manage, and execute their modernization projects with much greater confidence. If you'd like more information on our modernization maturity model, there's a link here. On behalf of Microfocus Government Solutions, I very much want to thank you for your time today, and I hope you got something from this Tech Talk. I also want to thank ATARC for bringing us together. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this 2021 Virtual Cloud Summit.
Thank you, Kevin. That was awesome. We really appreciate it. I would now like to introduce the first panel of the day. The moderator for this panel will be Dave Niceper. Dave is a tech reporter over at FedScoop. Over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Kirsten. And I'll just give everybody a second on my panel to turn their cameras on and mics on. Welcome to the first panel of ATARC Summit. We're here to chat about cloud use in a modern pandemic. And we've got a great panel for you today featuring Tom Santucci, DCOI Director at the General Services Administration, James Saunders, Chief Information Security Officer at the Small Business Administration, Alicia Johnson, Headquarters Cloud Program Manager at the Department of Homeland Security, George Duchak, Director and Chief Information Officer at J6 Information Operations within the Defense Logistics Agency of DoD, and Seth Kinley, Principal Systems Engineer of Pure Storage. Thank you guys for attending today, and I'm going to let you each individually tell us a little bit more about yourselves and your agency or organization, and maybe give us a little insight as well into what might be happening at a broad level with cloud within your organization. So Tom, if you want to start.
Hey, thanks, Dave. For those that know me, I did move to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I grew a goatee. I was required by the mayor to get a pickup truck and a goatee, having lived in Pittsburgh for the first time. Some of the things that we're doing is working with the agencies to share their experiences through a community of practice off of the Federal CIO Council. Some of the things that we're really harping on, and you may, is application rationalization. It's probably the cornerstone of building shared services. You know, we want to put the tools in front of the agencies to educate themselves on what to do before the technical aspects come. Your contractors, there's a lot of contractors on here that really could provide some tools for you to migrate to the cloud. But there's a lot of foresight that you need to do before you even move one iota to the cloud, is really understand what your application inventory is. A lot of agencies are using TBM to understand and put into buckets some of their duplicate applications. Your contractor is not going to be able to help you with policy that needs to come down from a top. Data center consolidation was a real big success only because it came from the top down. Our Deputy Attorney General sent out a memo. Our Chief Financial Officer sent out a memo, and the CIO was charged with implementing that data center consolidation. That would have never happened if it didn't come from the top. And Kevin had mentioned the single source of truth. It's amazing how little inventory we have in the federal government of the software that we buy. It's really, TBM helps understand that. So we're pushing agencies towards implementing TBM either at the budget cycle or the spend cycle. You got to start somewhere. It's a long uphill battle. But finally, you know, the idea is not just to move to the cloud, and create further isolation of these instantiations of products. Your vendors will probably beg you to collapse some of your environments because they're duplicative. It costs a lot of money. I mean, I used to run ITSM suites, and the software was only $150,000, but it cost $2 million in labor to run that software. So it's really, that's where we're going to that's where we're going to save a lot of money over and above data center consolidation. I'll leave it there.
James, what can you tell us about maybe a cloud success story at your agency?
Certainly. So really quick, SBA, our primary mission is to serve the small business community. There's over 30 million small businesses from coast to coast, as well as American territories. And a lot of our success stories, is around the context of the pandemic. But even before that, we were heavily into the cloud, really trying to modernize. So around, March of last year, pandemic is officially announced, and it's a go. We needed to help serve the small business community. So to do that, we really had to lean into using cloud services over using on-prem services due to the speed we needed to get out there to the environment. Yes, we could have ordered hardware, we could have expanded data centers, we could have found some fiber, et cetera, But why do that when you can leverage one of the CSPs that has the infrastructure for you? You can go in and flip that switch. Now you're able to expand as demand needs. So we're able to successfully serve the small business community throughout the early parts of the pandemic through the first round of CARES Act implementation, the first round of EIDL, as well as the first round of PPP. Now, I have to tell cybersecurity stories because I'm a CISO, right? So some of our cloud successes around cloud is we partner with DHS CISA to challenge the way that we do CDM, and we found that you can do CDM in the cloud. Same thing with the around TIC 2. Can you do the same thing with cloud services? We found the answer is yes. Just requires a new way of thinking, and that ultimately rolled into what is now out there known as the CDM molasses stack, what is partially incorporated into TIC 3.0. All those are success stories that we've built over the last 3-4 years, starting in 2017, with various pilots and engagements to show you can do business in the cloud as the federal government. You should do business in the cloud as federal government, but you got to do it intelligently in a way that you're not causing yourself burning extra money, and two, opening up security risk.
Alicia, what's going on with cloud at DHS during the pandemic?
As soon as I come off mute, I can tell you. But I do want to piggyback on what James was just saying. So here, the cloud, I own the HQ Cloud, the platforms, which are AWS, and we call it Cloud Factory 2, and Cirrus, which is the Microsoft Azure platform. But we are working closely with CISA to host continuous diagnostics and mitigation. So CDM is now on our Amazon Cloud Factory platform. So it's happening. And this is something that started after we went out in March. We did not stop the work we were doing, and we continue to onboard customers. We are exiting data centers, a brick and mortar data center. So customers across the department who are interested in cloud services, we're able to onboard those customers onto our cloud environments and support their requirements, scalability, consumption reporting, and the customer service that they deserve and need to make sure they're selecting the right platform for their unique requirements.
Now, George, what's the latest cloud developments at DoD?
Well, I can't speak for DoD, but I can speak for DLA. And we're a defense logistics agency. We do about 43 billion in revenue a year, and it's a working capital fund organization, which means we operate a lot like a nonprofit organization in that we have to apply business principles, take a product, add our cost recovery to it, and then sell it to the services. The services could buy it from us or go elsewhere, so we have to offer value. So the thing I enjoy about it is we operate just pretty much like a regular business. So we're doing a massive migration, just got approved last year, to move our entire ERP to the cloud. We've already closed 20 of 23 data centers, closed probably 21 of 23 by the end of this year. And just doing that journey. So it's a lot of lessons learned that we could share at some point, maybe during today's conversation. We are set up to, already on the cloud for a lot of our Office products, Microsoft 365, et cetera. We have a VDI infrastructure. So when COVID hit, we went from about 7,000 external users to 27,000 external users overnight without skipping a beat. So that's
last but not least, Seth, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know we just heard from you, but what cloud trends have you seen across government lately?
Yeah, thanks, Dave, and thanks for having me, everyone. So I'm the principal systems engineer for civilian federal. I've got a counterpart that does DoD, but we're both in regulated industry, so we speak the same acronym soup. And what we've seen with DCCP or DCP or data center consolidation was people are looking to do things more intelligibly, both in the hardware that has to remain behind, whether that be more efficient, less weight, less of a footprint, less thermal yield, or going to the cloud. And then which cloud do we pick, right? Of the big three, we've got AWS, Azure, GCP. Each one of them has a sort of strong suit, if you will, and each one is lacking in its own way. So what people have been trying to do is figure out what is the most efficient path to the cloud, whether that be multi-cloud or hybrid. And then as George said, 3-4-fold increase in users being external. How do we secure that, right? Unfortunately, we were very reactive and not necessarily too proactive. So now people are looking at it as what tools and tactics do I need? What new skill sets do we need to bring to bear to ensure that this is still something that can be given an ATO, that we're not going to end up on the front page of, local newspapers in Philly or wherever you happen to be. So we've seen an egress, and we've seen a lot of people looking for a helping hand, right? Science projects, like I said earlier, are very hard to maintain. There's a lot to be said for finding trusted advisors, trusted partnerships, and open ecosystems to facilitate success. And I think that's a pretty good summary of what we've seen, other than a rocket has been strapped to everything, as everybody knows, but we are where we are.
Well, thank you all again for being here. And before we get into Q&A, I just want to let everyone know in the audience that you can submit your questions on your own in the Q&A section of the platform. We'll be going through those and addressing them throughout the entire Q&A session. So please send them along as you have them. And we also have some questions, some poll questions for you all. So Alyssa, if we can queue up the first one. What is the biggest barrier your agency is facing during the pandemic? Give you all a second to answer that. And let's take a look at the results. All right, so it says security concerns, 44% are leading off, followed by a lack of IT resources at 26%. That'll segue nicely into my first question here for you all, which is just how have your agency's respective approaches to the cloud changed during this pandemic? And are you seeing what was reflected in the poll just now in terms of these barriers? Are you having to address security concerns and the lack of IT resources as you go?
So definitely at DHS, specifically headquarters, we're heavily relying upon Microsoft Teams, something that we didn't do the end of February or the early part of 2020. We would meet, we would have conference rooms that we can go to, but on a drop of a dime, we had to turn around and start using Microsoft Teams for all of our meetings, whether they're professional discussions about what's going on or water cooler conversation. Everyone is using that Office 365 suite on their cell phones at their home when they're on the go, safely on the go with a mask on. But definitely, we all, I think across the board, have the security concerns that we're fighting individually and collectively, but the IT resources have been a bit of a struggle because of the hiring freezes that we've experienced with the previous administration. So we're hoping that this turns around and we can begin to really hire some, not necessarily experienced, but some talent who is willing to just really push the envelope towards some cloud-focused innovative efforts.
Yeah, one of the things we had to come up with was collaboration tools. DHS uses Teams, I guess, and we use another product, but collaboration was really big with GSA, not only internally within GSA, but we are mainly an external facing agency. And we needed to get Zoom Gov was something that came to be out of the pandemic that didn't exist before. Excuse me. They were able to react quickly and get that FedRAMP. One of the biggest challenges is a lot of agencies don't trust, still don't open up the firewalls for Zoom to work properly. So that's still being a challenge, but it's certainly better than what we had before. I don't want to mention the product, but we had to abandon it at that point early on.
There we go. Yeah. So my comments to that is pretty much aligned to Alicia's comments there. For me, and I'm a CISO, my concerns are very much in security, but I think we solved a lot of those issues and we're constantly adapting as the operating environment changes. But it's really the people. It's not that many people with the skills that you need to make the security changes, to make the operational changes, to really pitch your cloud footprint where it needs to be. And it falls down to maybe a handful of people, and you got them doing everything, and now they're stressed out, burning out. Now you're putting yourself in a worse situation. So security concerns are big. There's lots of them, especially if you're new to the cloud and your culture doesn't really support more modern styles of cybersecurity. But the lack of IT resources, that there is the roadblock to a lot of success that I see.
Just like to add on to that, James, I think it's great. And that's what we've seen in industry right now is no matter the agency, civilian or DoD or IC, everybody's looking for a common collaborative platform that has been certified and accredited. They're also looking for guide rails around what the cloud means. You know, to James's point, there are a finite number of CISOs. There are even fewer people that can navigate sort of the esotericness of you know, dismantling security memorandums. And you have to come up with a new set of tools, right? Those being software or hardware, and a new set of basically skills that people will need to embrace to run this down, right? Just because you could certify it and you could get an ATO on-prem doesn't mean that you're going to be able to do that, say, with Outposts or with a snowball at the edge. You have to look at the big picture and take into account security at the forefront, because it's a lot easier to, you know, do it correctly, to pour the foundation, then build a strong house, than it is to be reactionary and then scramble. And that's been, like I said, agencies all across the gamut of regulated industry, healthcare, financial, federal government, state and local. Everybody's looking for a silver bullet that hasn't really been cast quite yet. So, you know, plan appropriately, call in resources, look for those tools, and look for people that are maybe further down that road. And if you can't, you know, if you can't top them, it's like academia, steal from them and go out strong, but just cite your sources.
Now I want to pull up poll question number 2, if we can. What were the greatest challenges as your agency transitioned to a digital organization? And let's take a look at those results. All of the above, 32%. All right. Collaboration was 29% after that, though, and we have a tie for third with virtual capacities and secure networks. That leads to my next question for you all. And George, maybe we can start with you. What do you see as the biggest barriers to your respective cloud journeys heading into 2021? Obviously, we're still in this pandemic. What solutions are you exploring to address some of these challenges that were highlighted in the poll?
Yeah, I think collaboration, you know, that's my answer, was our biggest issue. In addition to just tools, one of the big lessons learned we got, though, was we were a little bit ahead of the rest of the defense agencies in our cloud migration. We were already in an IL5 environment with Microsoft 365. COVID came, and the DoD CIO quickly stood up, you know, Microsoft Teams solution in an IL2 environment, CVR, commercial virtual remote. And that worked well, had a lot of success there. And now the migration of the department is, at least fourth estate in defense agencies, is going in that direction. So they've got agreement with Microsoft to take what we're doing in the CVR environment and to move it into an IL5 environment. So all that sounds great, except we are already in a Microsoft IL5 environment, but not the instance that the fourth estate is going to. So you'd think it'd be a simple thing to move from one Microsoft environment to the next, but it's not. It's going to be a massive pain in the rear end. We've got about half a petabyte of information that we actually have to port from one environment to the next. And to make matters even worse is that Microsoft really doesn't want you to change environments. And I don't know if that's because they want to make sure your environment's sticky. Once you get in there, they want to make sure you stay there, or if they never thought of anybody changing from one instance of Microsoft to another. So there are really no tools to do this. And if you take the half a petabyte of data that we have to move and put into another environment, even if you transfer to that a gigabit per second, it would take 46, 48 days to do so. We probably will get speed somewhere around 100 megabits per second, which means it's a 480-day migration period. So unless we find a good way of transferring that data from one instance of Microsoft to the next instance of Microsoft, we are going to have some problems. So I don't know if I answered your question directly, but that's probably front of mind, our biggest pain point in cloud, our cloud journey right now.
Are the rest of you seeing something similar at your agencies?
I've seen something somewhat aligned, but slightly different. I will say early in the pandemic, like what I coined the teleconference wars, where you have different vendors, Teams, Zooms, WebEx, Cisco, Skype, etc., and everybody trying to use something at the same time in order to communicate and collaborate, right? And some security policies were different than others. It was very hit or miss, very dodgy early on. I will say across the government, we're starting to see it settles more towards Teams now, but that leads to the next challenge where not all Teams environments can talk to each other. So SBA is part of some pilots with interagency federation, but if I were to reach out to DHS, sometimes our teams are a little bit incompatible where I can't type. I might be able to show my video, but I can talk at least, and then other team sessions for other agencies, I can't do anything. So that's something that we're trying to solve actively now, but that was a early issue of interagency collaboration, not necessarily internal to your own agency.
Yeah, I'll echo that. That's one of the big issues we had, changing different environments for teams. We're on one environment within our agency, then to talk to people outside, we'd have to get them to a different environment. So it was a lot of pain to do that.
Yeah, I took a good hard look at Teams, but when I found out there's different configurations of Teams and not all of them can talk to each other, it was like, I can't believe this. On a good note, one of my peers in the Office of Government-Wide Policy within GSA is CIO Council had asked him to put together a white paper on how we can better collaborate amongst agencies. One is the thing is if it's FedRAMP, allow the protocols to go through. That would help a lot.
I was going to say, while we're chatting about this, I'll pile on to what Thomas, James, and George have said. There was a lot of, at the early outset, right, there was a lot of misunderstanding or omission that led to ineffective communication where even within, agency, so DHS versus DHS-EM, and then vendors coming into the mix, it was a huge deal if standard operating procedures aren't in place to ensure that on the other end of that Zoom is a US citizen on US soil, and you're not talking to an SME that comes from, let's just call it a sensitive nation that shall remain nameless, but likely ends in, consonant clusters and an I. You have to ensure who you're talking to and on what platform. And we had such a hard time doing that. And it seems that everybody sort of has come to the natural conclusion of we have to standardize. The standardization is still WebEx, Teams, Skype, or Zoom. I haven't seen as many BlueJeans or GoToMeetings lately, but we've standardized on certain platforms that are essentially auditable. We can get telemetry off of it, and you can ensure who you were speaking to was in fact who you intended to speak to. Ultimately in intra-agency communication, it's still, I find that one fun where you're cleared, but it's the wrong type of clearance, or it's lacking a suffix that gives you sort of OU or NTK, right? And then you get to the conversation where you're just about to make a point and somebody asks to think about that nuanced sort of procedure, and then they boot you, right? So you have to do your homework on the way in. And I think everybody's gotten much more effective, and that's at the forefront of their thought when we start these things, as opposed to scrambling because we were being so reactionary and just trying to keep things up and running.
In addition to what everyone has echoed across the panel, going to using Teams or collaboration tool instead of meeting in person, everyone at DHS, they're not IT specialists, so they don't understand the technology behind Microsoft Teams or cloud collaboration tool. So that was a challenge for us in the beginning, where we had users who wanted to still set up conference bridges and go through a roll call of who's on the call, where we had to take a step back and do a little bit of training and awareness. This is what this tool can provide you without you doing any additional manual efforts. And that took about a month or so to really get everyone on board. But now I can confidently say we're at pretty much, if not 98%, 100% leveraging Teams.
Now, we touched on security a little bit earlier. I'm trying to answer some of these questions in the chat now. We have one directed at you, James, but I'll pose it to the rest of the group as well after. How is SBA cloud security changed with full remote work? Obviously, telework has been a huge driver of a lot of agencies move to the cloud here. So what are you guys seeing, starting with you, James, but how do you see security changing?
A little bit of nuanced question there, because a lot of what we've done for the pandemic, we were kind of doing before, if not was in a pilot state. So some of the things that we really ramped up and leaned heavily on nowadays is, using SASE solutions as our secure edge, so that instead of connecting to a VPN concentrator and knocking that over with a new amount of traffic that you'd never really see except for snow days, now is able to expand elasticity so that everyone can connect. Now you can use that as one of your validation factors for what is called conditional access, to say, hey, this person is able to connect to my secure edge. They have all the requirements to meet it. I validated identity. Now they're able to access O365 in a manner that's secure in a sense. So I will say that it really allowed us to ramp up and use the features that were available that were otherwise kind of in limbo, whereas the value was like, we could use this, but we trust this and we did this forever. Why would we change and use this new thing that's unvalidated? So it pretty much opened that up. You honestly really have no choice unless you wanted to, really ramp up your on-prem capabilities. But that's starting to become a diminishing return, where it's more cost effective in some cases to go to the cloud instead.
Now, are the rest of you seeing that as well?
Yeah, I tend to agree, and answered in the chat that right now, from an industry standpoint, it seems like hybrid is sort of the model of right now and is leading the charge, where not everything can be cloudified until we figure out how to do so, right? There's some monolithic applications, and let's face it, a skiff is a skiff, right? Most of those don't phone home in the traditional sense without a whole bunch of, wrangling that James would have to do and some other folks. But yeah, by and large, it's all a matter of what is going to work for the agency ultimately, and then what provider is going to be the most advantageous. So it hasn't been, an all Azure show, an all AWS show, and all GCP show. It seems to be fiefdoms of providers do better or have the appropriate accreditation, geolocation, right? There's east, there's west, there's flyovers, there's stuff in APJ. It depends on where you are going to be physically closest to it, and then what you're going to be capable of doing. To Alicia's point, there's a huge technology, void in some places. There are people that live in the sticks that don't get gigabit, that have never used these tools, right? They're pretty much set with how they've done things, and getting them modernized with new tools and new tactics is a learning curve. And then, let's face it, all of this bandwidth is finite, right? We don't have unlimited bandwidth. So as this progresses, we're going to have to come up with means of looking to either geo-federate via the cloud or object stores, or look at moving data back and forth, right? There's no clear answer, and a lot of it is going to be unique as it moves forward, especially since data isn't getting smaller by and large and people don't want it slower. They have bigger projects that they want faster, and it has to be secured. And unfortunately, those three are sometimes mutually exclusive depending on how you do it. And that's why we have these talks, right? What do we see? How do we figure it out? Where do we go?
I think agencies that are still running on TIC 2.x we're incurring most of the problems because running all their data through their TIC as users were remote became an issue. GSA was a good example of moving to the cloud. Every user within GSA was very telework friendly before the pandemic, and they're obviously now. But we're all using our internet connection to go directly to the cloud. There is no security layer. I think for agencies to get off at 2.2, a lot of them are adopting or piloting 3.0 TIC, and that'll help significantly in eliminating that bottleneck at the TIC. Hey, one other thing I wanted to mention was our group put together a cloud strategy guide. Some of the things you want to consider when moving to the cloud, and it could be at, whether you're halfway through it or all the way through it and you want to do a refresh. But we had 7 different agencies be involved in this. Air Force had a lawyer on cloud procurement that was phenomenal. They did part of that section. There's 10 different sections within the document, everywhere from business value to risk, compliance. CISA did the security and compliance section for us, to automation, to governance, to even the exit strategy of what you want to do when you get out, because sometimes you want to buy it from a different contract vehicle and hence have to move your cloud. So it's really, I think, one of our best documents we've put together. And we've also put together the application rationalization playbook that we did a couple of years ago.
I want to now shift over to our last, third and final poll question. If we could cue that up. Give some people some time to respond to. How much will your agency have to change to adapt to the new normal? I've seen some questions about how many people are participating in the poll. I can't actually see that number when the results pop up, but we do have 136 participants in the Zoom. And if we could see the results of that. %38 saying only have to change a little bit, and then 24% saying change a lot. So that's interesting that there's a discrepancy there. Maybe some of you could comment on that. What agencies, is this a size issue, do you think? Are small agencies the ones that are kind of more adaptive here and don't have to change as much, whereas larger agencies have to change a lot, or is that?
I think the data center inventory of the agency really matters. A lot of them have basement data centers, so they had their users populate the data, populate that mixed use facility, and they're used to 10 gigabyte bandwidth between their users and their servers. It's hard to do that in a telework environment. And they have large ingest things that they need to get done. Otherwise, they're out of business. If you think about some of the agencies that bring in terabytes of data on their investigations, they need some method of uploading that data.
I know too that we talked a little bit, and I wanted to get into this as well, data center optimization trends that you're seeing in 2021. What sorts of things should we be on the lookout for as agencies trying to become more efficient?
Well, one of the things that came out of HR 133 was the Energy Efficiency Act. of 2020. I don't see that going away. I think it's really falling in line with what this administration wants to do in terms of climate. So there's going to be a lot more mandates on metering energy use within the federal government, and data centers are certainly a big hog in that regard. And moreover, storage is the biggest user of that power. They take up the most space, they use the most power, and it's the most underutilized item we have in our arsenal. I mean, just collapsing the storage environments and putting that into a shared service would be huge savings. It's the most sought after thing on year-end funding to buy that you don't need. No offense, Pure Storage.
It's okay. I just have to add a footnote. Some storage is monolithic and power hungry and generates a lot of heat. Some doesn't. But I agree in that we've seen that trend is that data is becoming dispersed, right? A lot of it is cloud native or cloudified to begin with and doesn't have to reside on-prem. The converse of that, obviously, is that if you're in the cloud and you're highly transactional or you're moving those large data sets back and forth, as Tom said, it becomes untenable in spend, quite frankly, in cloud solutions that don't support suspend, right, of either that be compute or that be storage instances where it runs all the time and you're getting charged and it's underutilized. That's just a compounding negative, right? You move it to the cloud and you say it's going to save you money, and then it turns out that they're charging you by bit that you transfer, and you're moving around, high res, let's just say recognition telemetry, because might be a thing for the federal government, and those are 50 gigabyte big byte basically per pole, depending on what you're doing, and shuttling it across the country can be very expensive. So, DCCP, data center consolidation practices, it's not going away. And then there are things like IJC3 for high value assets and other stuff where it all goes hand in hand. And you can look at technology that's evolved, and a lot of storage has not evolved. It requires L630s, it requires multiples, floor reinforcements, its own special cooling. That's a thing of the past, right? It's archaic at best, and it needs to change. So vendors have looked, and not just Pure, but other vendors are looking at shrinking the footprint, the old adage of doing less with more, requiring less power, and then proving it, citing our sources. Ion Geophysical took 50 racks of infrastructure and replaced it with 4 4U devices, 16 RU, 1/4 of a rack. And we see that time and time again in the federal government, and it's been leading. And that's where, to the question in the chat or in the Q&A, that's why I think hybrid is going to be here for some time, where we can't get rid of everything. We still have mainframes, right? As long as FICON's around or InfiniBand is around, not everything will be cloudified. But the majority of user share and sort of that low-hanging fruit, put it into the cloud that makes the most sense for you, that you can secure and that you can get an ATO on. And then the rest of it is going to evolve over time, but frankly, probably resembling a glacial pace, right? It's a lot of data and it's going to get there. It's just going to take its time.
And we only have about 3 minutes left, but I did want to get in one last question. The Obama administration gave us the cloud first strategy. The Trump administration gave us the cloud smart strategy. Is there a third iteration that you expect under the Biden administration or would like to see, and what might that look like? Maybe we can get George or Alicia or James to chime in here. What do you think is like the third step in sort of our cloud journey that agencies need to take?
Kind of piggybacking on what Tom mentioned earlier, really positively encouraging organizations to share the storage spaces that they are spinning up and they're only using a small portion of, and really focusing on savings. We're migrating customers to the cloud, but we want to make sure that there's savings associated with their cloud efforts and that they're just not lifting and shifting. We want to make it efficient and modernize current efforts. So sharing cloud storage capabilities and not forcing, but asking the question up front, do you need to have this server up and running 24 hours a day? Or can we suspend your service about 6:30 and turn it right back on for you at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning? I think those would be pretty smart to have a cloud savings effort.
Yeah, one of the things that really could be a game changer is the Technology Modernization Fund. In the last proposed bill, it's $9 billion. I mean, this all started last year or years before, where GMF only had $25 million to spend, and it was a payback model. What's being proposed is more of a grant model, where agencies would be able to tap into this fund, and we would only hope that proposals would come through that would collapse these environments, not expand on them and create isolation. You know, one of the big things is cloud.gov, which GSA runs. SBA is a big beneficiary of that in their expansion. They were able to do it in a quick amount of time and benefit from that.
Well, that's a good note to end on. Unfortunately, we're all out of time for today. I want to thank you all for joining us, and thank you to the audience for tuning in. Kirsten, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much to our panelists and Dave for the really insightful conversation. Up next, we are going to have another emerging technology talk, and we will be hearing from another Paul today, Paul Markson. Paul is the SVP Data Architecture and Chief Evangelist over at Denodo. Paul, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kirsten. And let me share my screen so that everybody can see that properly. So hopefully you can see that. So thank you, Kirsten, and also thanks to the audience for joining us today for this tech talk entitled Accelerate Migration to the Cloud Using Data Virtualization. And just listening to that previous panel session is a very, very hot topic, obviously. My name is Paul Markson. I'm the Senior Vice President of Data Architectures at Denodo Technology. And in this role, I spend a lot of my time talking to organizations around the world, both in the private sector and in the public sector, about their data strategies, data architectures, et cetera. And invariably, the cloud, migration to the cloud and managing the subsequent hybrid architecture always come up in these types of conversations, these discussions. So we all know about the benefits of moving to the cloud, the flexibility, the on-demand scalability, bringing up systems, bringing up compute capacity when you need it, and then shutting it down again when you don't need it, etc. But there's also what I call the benefit of leveraged innovation, taking advantage of the innovation work done by Microsoft, by Amazon, by Google, especially in the area of advanced analytics, machine learning, AI, etc. Simply being in the cloud allows you to take advantage of these advanced services, these AI machine learning services like natural language processing, vision recognition, chatbots, etc. All these are available as services, and you can just take advantage of them. And it's a great accelerator for your innovation. Now, the cloud journey for most organizations, and by organizations, I include government agencies, it's not a one and done event. It's a series of stages that you go through as you transition more and more systems to the cloud. And this diagram shows those various stages. Now, in this tech talk, we're going to concentrate really on the transition or the migration to the cloud, and then a bit about the resultant hybrid architecture that's a consequence of this particular transition. So when systems are migrated to the cloud, there are a number of options. You can see a bunch of them on the screen here. And sorry, Alyssa, I know you mentioned people shouldn't really do just lift and shift. People still do lift and shift when they move to the cloud. The most popular one of these is Refactor Re-Architecture. This is modernizing your system as you move it to the cloud. Over a third of respondents, the data here, the percentages are actually from a cloud survey that we run every year. One of the questions of this cloud survey is, how are you migrating your systems to the cloud? And over a third said they're doing Refactor Re-Architect. They're modernizing their system as they move it to the cloud. There was a fourth option, which I always find very interesting, which was retire and replace, and only 7% of respondents actually selected that option. So we're not very good at retiring old legacy systems. We just create new ones in the cloud and the old ones just live on, which is some of the challenges that were mentioned in the previous panel session. Now, Refactor Re-Architect is the most popular option for moving to the cloud, but it is also the most intrusive and the most risky to your users. And by intrusive, I mean that it's got the biggest impact on the users of the system. Take the data warehouse example, migrating to Snowflake. There could be hundreds or even thousands of reports and dashboards running against that on-premise legacy Oracle data warehouse. So obviously the impact of migrating to Snowflake and modernizing that data model, paying down some of the technical debt that is accumulated on that old data model, can be very widespread across the users, the applications, reports, dashboards that are plugged into that data warehouse. One of my colleagues once described this as like waking up in the morning to find that all of the cell phones that your family used have changed from iPhones to Android phones. And now all of a sudden the icons are different, they're in different places, the way you navigate the phone is different. Your important data like your photos didn't move across to the new phone. And your 8-year-old son is in tears because he's just found out that his high scores and the progress on his favorite video game have been wiped out. And the only one who seems to be okay is your 12-year-old daughter who thinks you're stupid for not being able to use the new phones. But that's what it's like for your users when you make major changes, major migrations to the cloud. It can be very, very disruptive for them. So the question is, how do you actually make it less painful for your users during a cloud migration? One very successful way of doing this is to hide these changes from the users behind an abstraction layer. The client tools access their data. By client tools, I mean reports, dashboards, applications, etc. Access the data through this abstraction layer and not directly from the data sources. And this actually isolates them from the changes. The abstraction layer, in this case, the data virtualization platform, is inserted between the clients, like I said, the dashboards, reports, etc., and the legacy on-premise data warehouse before the migration takes place. The data virtualization platform exposes the data warehouse data as is, simple pass-through operation. The data looks the same to the clients, they're just getting it from a different source. So all those reports and dashboards and applications do have to change, but the change is for them to get the data from a different source from the data virtualization platform rather than the legacy data warehouse, but that's all. So the changes are typically very minimal. You can then go and create your target schema, in this case, in our Snowflake data warehouse, and we can expose that schema through data virtualization platform itself. If the schema in Snowflake is different from the one in the legacy data warehouse, you can use the data virtualization platform to make it look like the old schema, effectively reverse engineer the changes so it looks like the old data. Finally, you copied the data from the legacy data warehouse to the target, to Snowflake, in bite-sized chunks. For each set of data that you copy, you can test it on Snowflake. And once it's good, once you're happy with it, you can make it live simply by reconfiguring the data virtualization platform to get the data from Snowflake instead of from the legacy data warehouse. The clients, the reports, dashboards, etc., still get their data from the data virtualization platform. The fact it's now coming from Snowflake is totally transparent to them. Also, if there's a problem when you go live, for example, your performance is not meeting what you require despite your testing, you find that the data's got some errors in it, then you can revert back to the legacy data warehouse just by reconfiguring the data virtualization platform to go and get the data back from the legacy data warehouse rather than Snowflake. So you can easily flip back if you need to. Once you're happy, once you're content, once you're sure that that data is good, then it's simply rinse and repeat with the next data set and continue like that until you've migrated your data onto your your target, onto your Snowflake target, and then you can shut down your legacy data warehouse. So this hides the pain from your users. In this way, the data virtualization platform acts as this abstraction layer, isolating the users of the data from the changes in the physical data infrastructure. It gives the abstraction layer gives the users the ability to pick and choose what tools they want to use. In other words, you're giving them this bring your own tool strategy. It also gives IT the flexibility and the freedom to modernize and optimize that data infrastructure without worrying about all these debilitating impact on the users and 8-year-olds crying because they've lost their high scores. This is exactly what the US Army did with their Logistics Data Analysis Center, LDAC. LDAC maintains supportability analysis, life cycle analysis for program managers and project managers supporting the logistics efforts for the US Army. They needed to modernize and consolidate their legacy Oracle systems and move to a modern data lake architecture with zero downtime. You can't just shut off your logistics supply chain to the Army, especially when they're in Afghanistan and Iraq and places like that. The US Army actually used data virtualization as an abstraction layer to isolate all the users, all the reports, all the analytics from the actual change. It simplified the whole program for the users. They had over 1,000 PL SQL reports that were written against the original Oracle systems, and they were able to transfer those, de-risk the program, because it consolidated 20 different systems just down to 8 systems in a period of 18 months. And this actually went through absolutely seamlessly. And it did, back to the point made in the previous panel, it saved a lot of money consolidating all those systems. It saved tens of millions of dollars doing that. So key takeaways from my very brief talk. Cloud modernization systems are complex, and they do actually impact the users unless you take care to mitigate that. Using a tool like data virtualization as this abstraction layer, it allows you to actually reduce risk and reduce complexity of the migration, allows you to do it in a very phased approach, allows you to mitigate the risk and the impact on those end users. And the resultant architecture is actually a lot more flexible, a lot more adaptive to the needs of the agencies as it spans this hybrid architecture, which, again, as the panel session said before, is the way that everybody is going to go. All the agencies are going to end up with this hybrid cloud on-premise mix of systems, and data virtualization-based architectures, logical data fabrics, allow you to actually manage that in a very effective way. And with that, I will just say thank you, everybody, very much. You can get more information at www.deno.com, and I have now come to the end of my 7.5 minutes of almost fame.
Thank you, Paul. That was great. Next up, we will have another emerging technology talk where we will be hearing from Ryan Pacini. Ryan is the Director of Product Marketing over at Acquia. Ryan, we look forward to hearing from you. Please take it away.
Thanks, Kirsten. Can you see me now, okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to share out my screen. So thanks again for having me today. My name is Ryan Pacini. I'm the Director of Product Marketing for a company called Acquia. And you've probably seen similar titles on other presentations today, but I think the question is not just, are you ready for the constituent experience to move online? Are you ready for it to be your new normal? And what does that look like, and how are you planning for that? And at Acquia, we empower government agencies to engage citizens and constituents with great digital experiences. And the foundation of what we do is we help agencies with their website and their mobile experience as kind of the foundation of the way that they engage with citizens and constituents. Then we help them think about how to extend that content and that experience to emerging digital channels where their constituents are spending time, whether that's something like a conversational interface, digital signage, wearables, but the foundation still for most government agencies is their web and their mobile web presence. And at Acquia, what makes us different than other organizations who are thinking about how to empower agencies to create content experiences is that we have open standards. So someone like an Adobe or an Oracle or a Salesforce, they're mostly closed ecosystems in terms of how they provide content solutions for their customers. They're built in the way that you build on top of their solutions. And you may know Acquia as the commercial organization behind one of the largest open source projects called Drupal the founder of Drupal, is still the chief technology officer at Acquia. And and over the course of a few years, we've built out a variety of complementary tools that enhance Drupal, which is meant to be your content management system. And as a result of that, we've kept the same standards and philosophy and approach, which is all of our solutions need to be flexible. They need to connect with a variety of other systems, and they need to be fast. And so over the course of the last few years, you can see that we become a market leader when it comes to helping government agencies with their web and mobile and emerging digital channels. And this is a quick nod from Gartner, which is the leading analyst when it comes to evaluating what's called digital experience platforms. And they consist primarily of content solutions, web content management, as well as advanced communications tools, whether it's things to personalize a constituent experience or automate the experience. And we've been the fastest rising provider over the course of the last few years. And just a quick highlight on some of our government experience. A few to call out here: Fannie Mae, the IRS.gov runs on the Acquia platform, as well as we have an emerging state and local business, but a variety of agencies are utilizing the Acquia platform to power their web, mobile, and emerging digital experiences. We are FedRAMP moderate certified, so that is part of the security standards that we hold, as well as a few others that you see here on this slide. And one of the challenges that we continue to hear from government agencies is the blending of constituent or customer expectations, whereas the people that you're communicating with have the same bar for you in terms of the experience that they expect to receive as a commercial organization, a Walmart or Target. And I think this quote here from Eileen Smith accurately summarizes the pressure that's on many agencies to deliver on digital experiences for their constituents. And most agencies are in a place where they're trying to figure out how to get content to their constituents in an effective way. And when they survey the market and the solutions that they have to get the content to their constituents, it's a difficult equation because you have three primary buckets. You have the traditional web CMS platforms, which many of them have been around for a long time. They're scalable, they're secure, they meet all FedRAMP requirements. However, they're notoriously hard to use for anyone within an agency who doesn't have a deep technical background. So they're typically constrained to a bucket of a few users. On the flip side, you have the consumer site building tools or consumer content platforms. And these are tools like WordPress. However, the challenges with these tools are obviously some of the security requirements that you need to adhere to, but also there's a limit in terms of the functionality that they offer because they're designed to appeal to everyone. And then the final category, which may have come into your purview, is headless content platforms. And these are tools that allow you to deploy content across any digital channel, web, mobile, conversational interface very effectively. But the problem with these tools is that they're, again, constrained to a few folks within IT, and they are a risk in terms of compliance and governance just because they are newer in the marketplace. And what most leading agencies are looking for is a solution that combines the best of all what I just showed you on the previous slide. And it helps all personas who are going to play a role in getting content live and enhancing content for your constituents. So the IT leaders are always thinking about how can we be efficient? How can we deliver the best service to the agency? Developers are focused on creating new features and usability. And CIOs are thinking about how do we adopt the latest and greatest technology that's going to help us engage with our constituents everywhere they are. And so this idea of an agile CMS that helps across all phases and all personas is what we continue to hear from agencies that the ideal state, what they're looking for. One example of an agency that we've helped recently is New York State. They had a tremendous increase in traffic. They served over 60 million users. They had 349 million page views from the beginning of the pandemic over the course of the first few months. And so they not only needed to ensure that the content remained live and they could handle the incremental traffic. So they needed a cloud platform that for their content management system that could scale quickly, but they also needed to empower more members of their agency to deploy content effectively. And we think that at Acquia, the future of content management and helping agencies deliver the right content to their constituents is through low code. And so this is just a quick overview of what is possible with an agile CMS that is helping at all phases. And what you're seeing here would be someone who has a preset, predefined, pre-governed list of fonts, colors, and styles that can then be adjusted by someone within the agency who doesn't sit within the core digital team. And so I know I'm almost at my time, but quickly at Acquia, we highlighted today our Drupal cloud, which is focused on content for your website and your mobile site and emerging channels. If you are looking to reimagine that, we would love the opportunity. And we also do have advanced solutions in terms of customer data platform, automation of content, and personalizing your content through our marketing cloud. So thank you so much for having me today. And I think, Kirsten, I'm just about at my 7.5 minutes.
Thank you, Ryan. That was awesome. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Our last emerging technology talk of the day is going to be from Henry Grover and Matt Nolan. Henry is a consultant and Matt is a senior cloud architect over at Red Hat. Over to you, Henry and Matt.
Hello, my name is Henry Grover. I am a Red Hat cloud consultant.
Hello, my name is Matt Nolan. I'm a senior cloud architect with Red Hat.
And today we'll be talking to you about moving your organization to use the hybrid cloud. This is something we hear a lot of people are interested in these days. There's a lot of benefits to using the hybrid cloud, but there's also a lot that's involved in getting there. So some people have tried doing that in the past and they've had trouble. Maybe if we could just cover a little bit of what is useful about it and then what you could do to get your organization moving in that direction, I could see that being helpful to people.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say easily the biggest benefit is the flexibility that the hybrid cloud provides, right? Most organizations have diverse applications, they have diverse workloads, and some make sense to host it on private infrastructure. Others, it does make more sense to host into a public cloud type of environment, right? You may have strict regulatory requirements around certain apps, right? Or performance-related reasons that it just makes more sense to host them in your data center versus some apps that maybe have less sensitive type of data. And it makes sense to put those on the public cloud. There's also certain times of the year where you're going to have peak seasons or higher demand and wider swings in that. In those times, it makes a lot of sense for the public cloud to be your option because that pay-as-you-go model works much better. So it's a cost benefit. It's about flexibility first and foremost. And that's what organizations are really leaning towards doing.
Okay, so people want this flexibility, but they're unsure of actually where to start getting it. What could I do to break it down into bite-sized pieces so that next time it's easier?
Yeah, so you're going to want to start small and you're going to want to do it in a phased approach. You're going to want to do your scoping first, meaning that I'm going to go identify applications that I can port into the public cloud. That makes sense. I'm also going to go identify a certain number of business units and users that are going to be early adopters. You're not going to have your entire organization come in day one and fly in there, right? So you're going to want to make it where you can kind of measure that. And then at that point, you can go to the public cloud. So what you're going to do is maybe go, well, I'm going to go here first, right? And then I'm going to come in, I'm going to adopt my on-premise infrastructure to the private cloud model. And then you can start thinking about how you're going to manage it, how you're going to automate that, right? And then ultimately you can create your hybrid cloud as your time goes by and you get more sophisticated and your additional phases come on.
Point being, it sounds like figure out what you've got to start with and then start moving into that direction one step at a time rather than just trying to do it all in one go. So with these general ideas in mind, what challenges are people likely to encounter as they start on this journey?
Well, you don't want to do this as a shadow IT project, right? You don't want to do it in a vacuum. You want to make sure that you've got the right executive sponsorship, that you've got your operational teams involved. You pulled them in. They're going to be impacted, right? Certainly. That you're also going to have users that are going to be impacted. Your application owners are going to get impacted. So just make sure that you've got your stakeholders brought in early and often, and they're accountable, and they're stakeholders that you're going to want to bring along the way. And the other piece too, right, is that you're changing pretty drastically how you're going to provision services in your organization. So from a technical perspective, you're building this, but if your processes don't change, if your internal processes do not change, you're not going to see the benefit. So that's the other thing. Make sure that your processes are in alignment technically with what your new cloud strategy is.
Okay, and besides all of that, what should people do next if they're still unsure of where to start?
Sure. So to get started, they can contact us by reaching out to their existing Red Hat account executive to set up a discovery session, or go to redhat.com/services to learn more about how our training and consulting services can work with you.
Thank you so much, Henry and Matt. That was a really awesome presentation. Up next, we will begin our last panel of the day, which I have the pleasure of moderating. So if my panelists could go ahead and come on camera and unmute yourselves, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to briefly go through who we have on the panel lineup today. So you can just wave to the camera when I call your name out. We have Justin Morgan, who is a solutions architect in the Office of Enterprise Technology Solutions over at GSA. Next up, we have Sanjay Gupta. He is the Chief Technology Officer in the Office of the Chief Information Officer at the United States Small Business Administration. Then we have Adam Grant Nesher, who is the Director of Infrastructure Optimization COE at GSA. We also have Jerry Karen, who is the Director of Enterprise Network Management at the Bureau of Information Resources within the U.S. Department of State. And last but not least, we have Juliana Vida, who is the Chief Technical Advisor for the Public Sector at Splunk. Great, thank you guys. So before we begin, I just want to encourage anyone who's in the audience to please submit questions of your own in the Q&A section on this platform down below. We'll be sure to get through those questions during this panel and certainly get them answered for you afterwards as well. And panelists, feel free to type in your answers, but I'll also be directing them to you as well. So first, we're gonna have each panelist tell us just a little bit more about themselves, what they're up to right now. If we can start with Sanjay, please, I'd like to hear from you first.
Hi, good afternoon, Kirsten, and good afternoon to all of my panelists and the audience. My name is Sanjay Gupta. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at the Small Business Administration. Just a brief background for me, and I'll dive into what we're doing at the SBA right now in relation to the cloud and emerging technologies. Been with the SBA for about 4 years. Prior to that, been a CIO, CTO in the private sector for now almost 14 years. I've led a consulting practice with a large market research firm, and I've also authored 20 plus research papers with another large market research firm. And that's what I bring to bear at my role as a CTO in the SBA. So in terms of the challenges that the pandemic brought upon us, really there were three at a high level. First and foremost, we had to move to 100% telework or near 100% telework situation fairly quickly. And we needed to do this to ensure the continuity of SBA's business operations, given the role we were playing. Number two, we were faced with an unprecedented level of scaling up, anywhere from a 50 times to 100x scaling in terms of the transactions we were needing to process. And it was both a volume and a velocity challenge for us. And number three, obviously, we needed to maintain our cybersecurity posture while we were in a nearly maximum telework situation. So those were the challenges we were dealing with, and we used the cloud to address some of those things. So back to you, Kirsten.
Thank you, Sanjay. Next up, I would like to hear from Jerry, please.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Gerald Karen, Director for Enterprise Network Management in the Bureau of IRM, Information Resource Management, Department of State. Basically, to put it in simple terms, I'm the infrastructure guy, do the engineering and operations. Also, I have led the, for ATARC, I've led the Tech 3.0 working group, very successful working group. But we had multiple vendors come in, and in the proof of concept lab, set up their technologies and demo them at the end of this past year. Also co-chairing the Zero Trust Working Group with Trefania, who is from SBA as well. So that group is getting underway if anyone is interested. So for cloud, of course, everybody talks about the pandemic and what the new normal is going to look like. We were already successfully moving to the cloud. Luckily, we had many of our mailboxes and files already transitioned there that allowed us to get up to, like, I think we were at 90% telework. And the unique thing about us at the Department of State, of course, we're everywhere in the world. So, we have some very challenging sites with very little infrastructure that have to still use the cloud and the services we provide. We were able to quickly proxy some applications from on-prem. So we were able to ramp up pretty quick. But now what's that new normal going to look like? And that's kind of what the challenge is going forward, because it's not going to be the same where everybody's going to come back in the office en masse. So now that's kind of the things, looking at the policies, some of the risks that we may have taken, re-engineer to mitigate some of those risks, or accept them, or, roll back some of the things that we've done. So that's what we're currently going through.
Excellent. Thank you, Jerry. Next up, let's hear from Adam, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Adam Grant. I am the Director of the Cloud Adoption and Infrastructure Optimization Centers of Excellence in GSA. What we do is we're a government agency that gets embedded with other agencies across government, usually at the CIO, CDO level, to help that agency ahead in its modernization efforts. And ever since the pandemic, that meant working with different agencies in very, very different places in their current modernization cycle to try to meet the needs of workforce mobility. We've worked with agencies that was farther ahead, like state or SBA, where the goal was to scale up networking, transfer to implementing TIC3, edge networking to reduce the load on their internal networks. We work with agencies that have been just now discovering the joys of issuing GFE and how to manage GFE, because they were 100% on-prem until now. And our experience tend to cross over this entire span. I think very much like Sanjay and Gerald, most of our work has been around scaling up networking capabilities to facilitate cloud connectivity as we're helping those agencies move over resources, move over application to SaaS equivalents or cloud hosting. That has basically been the last 2 years of my life. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And next, I'd like to hear from Justin, please.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. Yeah, Justin Morgan, work in the Enterprise Technology Services, formerly Office of Telecommunication Services within GSA's IT category office. And our primary focus is EIS transition, of course, right now. But we've been doing some things, trying to help with the agencies, as they look to modernize. We've gone out and, talked to industry, talked to analysts, all these people. And basically what we've done is gone ahead and start putting out modernization use cases. So we've done a couple legacy voice to IP voice, getting rid of your TDM, your traditional T1s, T3s, whatever, and moving over to Ethernet-based transport. The MTIPs to TIC 3.0 type solutions, traditional TIC use case, and supplementing MTIPs with other managed security services to get more TIC 3.0 compliant. And then software-defined WAN, we've put up a modernization use case for that. And we also added that service to the contract, the EIS contract, the summer of 2020. And we realized that as agencies look to modernize their network, go more to the cloud, more remote work, they have to take a look at their network. So we, as I guess, one of the main brokers of network telecommunications contracts in the federal government, have been modernizing our contract to assist with that. Things like adding cloud service provider connections, SD-WAN, and our continued work with TIC 3.0 with the CISA group, rounding out their guidance and use cases, and then updating the contract for the recent IPv6 memo that came out for IPv6 only. But yeah, more on that, but we're definitely going to continue to update our contracts, and mobility services is something we're going to tackle this year too. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. And to round out this portion of our panel, Juliana, could you please share with us what you're up to?
Sure, thanks Kirsten. Happy to join everybody today. You may have noticed I am different than most of the other panelists. I am the only vendor. And but I used to be a Govy. So I'm a 24-year retired naval officer. I drove ships and flew helicopters. And I spent my last 8 years in the government in the Pentagon. So I did some hard time there on the CIO's staff, including being the deputy CIO for the Navy, writing policy, doing policy compliance and things like that. So I can understand. I come from a position of understanding the government's viewpoint on technology and some of the hurdles and barriers that can get in the way. And now on the vendor side, I get to see all the cool technology innovations and get to help agencies and organizations implement technology to be more efficient. My role at Splunk is Chief Technical Advisor. I like to say I'm heavy on the advisor, not so heavy on the technical. We have teams of engineers and product people that cover that, but I can be an advisor, help organizations think bigger, think about the art of the possible, about what they can do when they leverage all of the data in their environment. Splunk is a data and analytics software company. People think we're a startup because we're kooky and we have cool t-shirts and we're fun and all that, but we've been around for 18 years and we went public in 2012. So we are very much we're here to stay, legitimate software company. It's a great company to work for. And what we've seen over the pandemic and related to cloud is, of course, what all these gentlemen are saying about maybe they already had telework in place or already had cloud environments, but some acceleration. Well, a lot of acceleration of some cloud migration plans that they had to be put into place like now. In the DoD, they put almost 1 million people to work remotely, in the same time frame that these other agencies did. And a lot of that is because the leadership kind of put to the side some of the traditional barriers, policy, people, agencies, not getting along with each other. They put that to the side and they went all in on the technology, particularly cloud. So it's been really exciting to see that at the federal level and at the state level. I get to support state also. And I hope we get to talk about some of those really cool use cases today. So thanks for having me on the panel.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. We have a panel full of rock stars here. Thank you guys so much. So I'm going to go ahead and start us off by popping up a poll question. Alyssa, if you don't mind, please putting that up for our audience, and our panelists can answer it too. I'll go ahead and read what I know the question is going to be. It's poll question number 1. Thank you. In your opinion, how has your agency done in embracing this new normal in the federal cloud space? And the options are: great, you fully embraced it. We are still working on embracing the new normal. We are working towards embracing the new normal, but still have a lot of work to do. Or we have not embraced it at all. So if you're at home, you could please go ahead and answer that for us. Maybe we'll just give it another second or two. And then Alyssa, whenever you think we are ready for the results. Awesome. Okay, so not too bad. Does that surprise anyone? Do you feel like this is sort of on par with what you expected? I'm going to go ahead and ask Sanjay if he could share with us his thoughts.
Yeah, I think so. So the results are not surprising at all, Kirsten. Definitely the last 10 months plus have allowed the agencies to a large part to respond to the needs of the mission, which obviously changed dramatically. So without sort of kind of belaboring those things, telework was one of those things. Cybersecurity was another thing, and scaling up operations were the other sort of the third dimension that I talked about. I'll just hit upon some few highlights and then sort of let my other panelists also speak to it. So first and foremost, what we did is we'd already started implementing a cloud-based secure network connectivity solution back in 2019. Like Juliana was talking about it, we accelerated the use of that solution instead of the traditional VPN solution because it was a cloud-based solution, more secure. What it led to was improved performance, improved cybersecurity posture, but most importantly, helped us improve our customer experience for the staff that was using that to connect into the network. The The second option or the solution that we implemented was something called conditional access. And without going a lot into details around the technical bits and bytes of it, as the name says, conditional access, it's a set of conditions that dynamically adjust what level of access the user has as they come in and connect to the environment. Again, we had already started implementation of the conditional access solution back in 2019. And so certainly the word key is accelerate that implementation. And specifically because we were in a telework situation, we needed to ensure that we were maintaining a strong and a healthy cybersecurity posture. So use of this conditional access helped us maintain that while allowing the ability of our staff to continue to produce to their mission needs. And so those are some few examples, really quick ones, where we leverage cloud-based solutions, and that allowed us to meet the mission needs while being able to balance all these sort of competing priorities in a quick manner. So.
Great, thank you so much. How about Juliana, from the vendor perspective, did that answer resonate with you? And do you have anything to piggyback off of Sanjay?
Of course it resonated, and I'm happy to see that answer. I guess it wouldn't have been relevant a year ago because we weren't in a new normal, we were in the old normal, but it would have been interesting to see this poll question last December, let's say, but I mean, December 2019, before the pandemic, because I would say that number wouldn't have been as high, that it would have been the IT people, the CIO people, the technology people, but not everybody else. But again, one good thing, if there are good things that come out of the pandemic, is now people are listening and paying attention and learning more about what's this cloud thing all about? How does that affect me as a warfighter? How does that affect me as an HR professional? How does that affect me as a supply chain person? And I like to say what we as technology practitioners and people in the IT world, we now have what we've always wanted, which is for everybody else to care about as technology as much as we do. And now they do. And a lot of that is because of cloud, because people are seeing the value, what we mean when we say it's scalable, what we mean when we say it's agile. It's becoming real for people, and it's great to see because the government just has to keep moving forward. It just has to. The government does have competitors, not like vendors, but the rest of the world, the bad guys in the world that are coming after us, those are the competitors, and we've got to stay ahead of them, and cloud is the way to do it. So I'm happy to see that number continue to go up, and I hope by this time, maybe by June, maybe it'll be in the 80s or the 90s. That would be awesome.
Absolutely. So I do have a question, and the question that I'm going to ask now is, what does it mean to strengthen your agency's cloud? What does this look like? So I would like to go ahead and hear from Jerry first, if you don't mind, Jerry.
Sure. So as we move to the cloud, our attack surface is changing, right? We're used to that on-prem, our culture is used to that on-prem, but when we move to the cloud, the attack surface changes. I like to use the example to simplify it. When you go to that office, portal.office.com, that's internet-based. It doesn't know who you are when you arrive there. Every bad guy can hit that. And if they know whatever you're using, your email address as your username, they're gonna brute force that in some ways. And if you have a very easy password, boom, they get in. But that's internet facing. It does not know who you are until you put in the right credentials or the right challenges. So multi-factor authentication, very important. Sanjay talked about conditional access policies, utterly important. So those are things that, normally we did things before was, used to that hard outer surface with the soft gooey center. But yes, I agree with Juliana, our threats are not the script kiddies or anything anymore. It's the nation state attackers. But darn it, if people don't start forgetting, they always talk about the nation state attackers and those external attackers. We have just as much prevalence, whether it's intentional or not, on inside our networks. So we have to strengthen that. That's why I'm a big advocate of zero trust. Conditional access policies are great, but I think we need to move things towards ongoing authentication, ongoing access, ongoing factors of different things like the disposition of how is that app configured that's facilitating access to the data. What type of device is that device configured properly? If it's a BYOD, that's why I need to know if the app, which is facilitating access to that data, is properly, because I can't control every device if you are doing a BYOD. So to put a shout out to Splunk, that's where those data analytics and taking in all those factors so we can do some kind of dynamic risk score as somebody is accessing it. A lot of times people talk about from the user standpoint. It's not always a user accessing data. So where's your data going? Where is it flowing? Where is it being shared? You got to understand what that data flow is. And your administrators, they have very high access. So you want to put the tight controls on them by time bounding them and doing least privileges. So there's a lot of things as we move to the cloud, we got to take better awareness of. You have to collect the telemetry. Justin and I mentioned TIC 3.0. I think there's a great opportunity with the flexibility that TIC 3.0 allows. Right now, I think most of us in our agencies are relying on on-prem infrastructure to get back out to the cloud because we have to go through one of our TICs. There's services out there now where get untethered from that network, still have the security telemetry, and go straight to your destination. So there's a lot of opportunities. I think security is enabling the mission if we do it right. With the users, it totally being transparent to the users in some cases where they still, the right people get the right access to the right things at the right time.
Excellent, thank you. I see a lot of head nods, so I think exactly what you're saying is, everyone else's thoughts too here on this panel. So my next question, I'm going to direct towards Adam. So Adam, could you please answer this for us? In this period of time of building the quote unquote new normal, what emerging technology has led to strengthening the federal cloud, in your opinion?
So I think I'm going to break away from the crowd a little bit here and say that I was really surprised with the first question. Because while a variety of the agencies were already well ahead and prepared for cloud adoption, some of them weren't. Some of them are trying to catch up. And I think that ATARC has a bias towards the more cloud active agencies. That said, to a lot of agencies, cloud adoption in general is still an emerging technology. I'm going to echo, I think, 4 people on this panel and say that TIC 3 adoption is essential. What we are seeing is agencies who are jumping over TIC 2, moving directly from some of them SSHing into their local networks, not even VPNing in, and jumping directly to TIC 3 implementation because it's essential for the workflow right now. So I'm going to completely echo and say that Zero Trust networking has been a primary emerging tech being adopted as we speak. I really love seeing agencies just jump over intermediate technologies. It solves so many problems. We have seen implementations on the AI, specifically RPA side, which allows agencies that are currently just starting to reach into the ET side of things to take advantage of some AI technologies without actually changing their internal operations. Building DevSecOps capability, building AI ops capabilities is a really heavy lift. RPA lets you take some advantages of the AI solutions without going through that process, at least initially. So we've seen a lot of agencies jump into that side. IRS has a really famous RPA integration that's going on right now. It's beautiful. Beyond that, I'm going to go back to Splunk and the Splunk ecosystem of cloud monitoring, the log analysis. As people are starting to federate cloud services, we see a lot of agencies that are discovering oh no, it's my 3rd month having a cloud account and I'm looking at a $300,000 bill and I don't know why problem. Cost estimate on the cloud, enterprise resource management on the cloud is a complicated resource. A lot of EIS teams don't have the necessary skill sets. Tooling that goes into monitoring, that goes into log analysis. I'm going to skip an interesting problem that brings and just say that they're essential for the growth of the organization, and we've seen a lot of those being adopted very quickly.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Justin, I'm going to jump over to you. So the question is, what changes will occur in your agency as a result in the pandemic, or maybe have already occurred?
Yeah, I would say that our OCIO group here at GSA, we're already pretty well positioned for remote work. And they are looking deeper at TIC 3.0 type solutions, but a lot of us were already teleworking many days a week. So adding the extra, at least in my work unit, really didn't change much. But I would say that, you know, to echo what Jerry and Adam and others have said, the push to more remote work is making the acceleration to a zero trust or a TIC 3.0 remote user use case, you know, cloud use case, email as, you know, use case, picking up more speed faster, and they're getting implemented more and quicker. We actually had quite a few COVID priority mods, you know, since last, whenever it was, spring, all the way through. And our team reacted well to that to help, you know, several agencies expand their ISP services, get more laptops, whatever it is they needed to do. And we're pretty successful helping out with that. I would definitely say that, you know, and others keep saying the TIC 3.0, CISA just released the draft remote user use case, and the comment period is closed on that. But that that document, should go check it out, CISA's website for Trusted Internet Connection. And it's basically laying the groundwork for more zero trust, more remote work. Obviously it's remote user, but you know, more of those evolutions of direct access to cloud and constant authentication. And also what we're doing on our end to help with that in EIS is we actually have on the street right now, and it should be getting sent for signature, but an addition for Trusted Internet Connection service to our managed security services. And what that is the encouragement, for lack of a better term, for our providers under EIS to basically stack their managed security services catalog to build TIC 3.0 solutions to meet the needs and user requirements as the work environment's changed and more remote work has happened. Yeah, there's going to be a heck of a lot of work going on that in you know, in the next year or so. And we're also looking to beef up our mobility because, you know, with 5G, folks are setting up, especially in DoD, you know, private 5G networks and, you know, connecting buildings on a base together and, you know, those kinds of things. So we're looking to assist with those areas with the modifications of our services. But I'll go ahead and pause there. Thanks, y'all.
No, that was great. Any of our other panelists want to add on to that as far as changes that have occurred or will occur in their agency due to the pandemic?
I just want to top off what Justin's talking about in the new release of the remote user. But, you know, I still see people or hear people they're asking about and getting clarification on TIC 3.0, things like that. Read volume 1, 2, and 3. You got to read each volume and read them in their entirety in order if you want to understand it. Don't just read bits and pieces of it. Read the whole volume set in order, and you'll get a good understanding of what TIC 3.0 is. Also, we talked a little bit about zero trust. Definitely pick up 800-207 because I hear zero trust just used as a buzzword. People don't understand it. Identity is very important, but a lot of these vendors, sorry to vendors, they come from it from the purely identity standpoint. It's about protecting the data at the end of the day. So how do you protect the data when it's not in use? Where is it going? How do you baseline it? What's normal look like? Really read 800-207 to get a good basic understanding of what entirety of zero trust is, I would suggest too.
I would like to, again, echo that, please, and take over something that Jerry said earlier about security as supporting the mission by allowing people to do the work they need to do safely. One of the things that we've been working on and has been a really part of the SEC part of the DevSecOps implementation is a lot of tooling and automation on the security side. You can't implement DevOps in government without implementing DevSecOps first. The security automation is essential for any kind of in-house or contractor-based software factory. So a lot of the work that we've been doing involved implementing the right tooling to both deal with compliance, point management, and deal with security as far as code scanning as part of the CDCI stack, etc. those spaces that turn security into an enabler, into part of the modernization team, are the difference between success and failures for a lot of projects. If I may just add to that, Kirsten, is that I've talked about in previous panels about at the SBA, we implemented cloud-based cybersecurity tools. We started the implementation back in 2018, and we changed the model to a very simplistic model, which is a singular way to manage, monitor, track, and secure all IT assets, meaning we don't care if it's in a cloud, if it's on-premise, if it's in a blue-colored cloud, purple-colored cloud, makes no difference. If it's on-prem, co-located, existing data center, makes no difference. Mobile, non-mobile. So we're looking at all IT assets in a singular fashion, and we had implemented this starting back in 2018. And so we have a full visibility into our environment, and we continue to do that even when people are in a nearly 100% telework status. And that has been a huge blessing for us. Had we not been there back in 2018 starting, I just kind of shudder to think what the state of affairs for us had been or could have been, given the volumes and the transactions that we had to process and the amount of capital that has flown through the SBA system. So again, I'm just kind of echoing what Adam has talked about or what Gerald was talking about earlier.
So I just want to add one other thing. And I think, you know, what Sanjay was just talking about, and I think what we've alluded to, but we haven't said explicitly, I think we're changing the culture with moving to zero trust and TIC 3.0 to being more effective at security. Historically, we are very much compliance oriented. We have FATARA scorecards, we have FISMA reports. It's all very compliance oriented. Compliance does not equal effectiveness. We're talking about being more effective at our security. So how do you measure that? How can you measure effectiveness? And then compliance will fall in place. So we're really at a culture change standpoint where we're shifting to be more effective at security rather than just checking the boxes. Like, I'll just use the example real quick. 853, one of the controls is for your system, you must provide authentication. But we know username and password is not a good method for providing authentication. But I was compliant. I wasn't effective, but I was compliant. I'd rather be more effective and fight the compliance fight than just be compliant, because that does not mean I'm effective. So I think we're really seeing the shift in culture change of how we do security. And going back to zero trust is about protecting the data. You're putting the security closer to the data, not this whole, you know, external hard shell with a cleft GUI center kind of thing. So I think that's what we're all alluding to, just to say it explicitly, that we want to be more effective, not just compliant.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you. I think this will be a good time for us to get through our next poll question. So Alyssa, when you get a moment, if you could please pop that up on the screen for us. And I'll go ahead and read it. It is, when adapting to the new normal, how satisfied have you been with your agency's ability to do so? So I'll take a second or two and wait for everyone to please answer whether they are extremely satisfied, satisfied, neutral, dissatisfied, or extremely dissatisfied. So Alyssa, whenever you think we've got enough responses in the bank, we can go ahead and pop up the results. Thank you. I'm not seeing the results. Is that just me? There we go. Okay. So mostly satisfied. That's good. No one's extremely dissatisfied. All right. Thank you guys for that. So in my next question, let's go ahead and direct this one to Sanjay, please. Sanjay, I think you touched on this earlier, but maybe you can elaborate a little further. What strategies have been put in place in order to strengthen cloud as the federal government is starting to embrace this new normal?
Excellent. So 3 or 4 key things here, Kirsten. So first and foremost is the people side of it, right? We all know we have a huge gap in terms of the skills and competencies because cloud is a new paradigm, and we need people to be able to adopt it, embrace it, and leverage the capabilities that the cloud brings forward for all of us to leverage it its fullest extent. Number 2, we need to continue to do IT modernization. I know all of my panelists have talked about it in various shapes and forms. And one of the aspects of IT modernization is it's sort of not one of those, you reach the destination, mission accomplished, and we can sort of rest. This is an ongoing journey. It continues on. You may have a smaller gap to achieve from a modernization standpoint or a larger gap, but you continue to keep moving on that. So the implication of that is the things that have been talked about at a broader policy level is things like the Technology Modernization Fund, or at an agency level like the IT Working Capital Fund. We have been leveraging the IT Working Capital Fund at the SBA for the last couple of years. So simply put, again, for the audience, in case you're wondering, the general appropriations in the government are a 12-month appropriation if you're lucky, if you don't have a CR in between. But how do you convert that 12-month money? Because most of these IT modernization projects cannot necessarily be accomplished within a 12-month span. So you need a continuity, a commitment to that funding over multi-year. So that's what the IT Working Capital Fund does, is allows the agencies to convert the 12-month money into a 3-year money, if you will. And so like the TMF. So the point here being is the commitment towards funding and sort of leveraging those commitments that are available to you from a standpoint of that. Last but not the least, I would say is leveraging data. Ultimately, we've talked about it. This is about finding ways to increase the use of data, reducing the data silos, getting an ability to see comprehensive views by stitching data that you were not able to stitch that data sets together in the prior non-cloud world or the on-premises world, because it was simply not feasible. I mean, today I won't go into a lot of details, but some of the visibility we have from a cyber standpoint, we had shared with some of our fellow counterparts at DHS and CISA, saying that most of the tools we have what's the concept of dual or multi-homing. Simply put, it allows you to send the data feed to 2 sources, 3 sources, 4 sources, as many as you like. And these are all cloud-based, targets and destinations. So when we are seeing those alerts and the information and the log data, so can somebody else, let's in DHS or CISA for that matter. So leveraging those kind of capabilities, using increased use of artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities, which are from our standpoint already built into some of the cloud solutions that we are already using. So there's a lot of things I've talked about from a strategy to continue the modernization there. So back to you, Kirsten.
Thank you. How about our panelists from another agency? Any strategies that were not mentioned from Sanjay before? Justin, what do you think?
No, I mean, I think he's touched on all the good parts there, and through the various questions. Yeah, I don't have anything to add. Thanks.
Okay, excellent. So let's move on to another question then, and this one is for Adam. Where do you see the future of federal cloud going, and what emerging technology will help it get there?
So from the future perspective, what I would like to see and what the administration seems to be very dedicated to are shared services. A rapid problem in cross-government is the need to reinvent the wheel. Every agency deals with cloud access, building the DevSecOps stack from scratch. GSA provides some shared services at the moment, login.gov, cloud.gov, but they are not adopted at the level that they could or should be, either because they're still lacking competitive edges to make them better for federal government than compared to commercial services, or because we're expensive. We are working on solving this. We're working on expanding the range of shared services that are available through GSA, and we're working with other agencies to build their services outside of their agencies and make them and expose them outside, so that agencies can share resources. Honestly, the first place that I would really like to touch on that would be automating security services. We're all familiar with projects like Castle Run, which have created an entire DevSecOps stack that's available to the rest of DoD, the rest of Air Force. Eventually, they are the standard bearer for DoD. And what they have done for DoD, we're trying to do for the federal government or the civilian side. These are things that I hope we will see more of as we continue.
Yeah, I did have something to add, sorry, but it was, I did want to say that we're looking at the as a service concept and how to add those things to EIS. We've already done RFIs with the providers for security and network as a service, and are looking to shape those out. Network as a service needs to be done in chunks, not a whole shot. So we're working at how to develop services around, or excuse me, yeah, contract services around those individuals that you can then build up to a total, and also offer a overview and ordering guide, which we're working on. But security as a service, definitely, and network as a service are things we're going to be working on, or we are working on. So wanted to add that.
Thank you. Jerry or Juliana, do you guys have anything that you would like to add to those final statements?
I'm going to echo what everyone has said about specifically about culture change. Gerald, I really liked that. I think that's a big, it's not just remote work, but now let's think about remote delivery of citizen services, remote healthcare, remote education, remote. And all of that, again, requires the agility and scale of cloud. Sanjay, you hit on my favorite word, and that's data. Truly, it's not, agencies don't have a problem with having enough data. They need help bringing it in and making it useful. And that requires a platform that doesn't care what format or structure the data is in, like Splunk. And it can just, bring it in and help you churn out data-driven answers and take action quickly. And the collaboration, the future, and the collaboration between agencies, within one agency, across sub-agencies, that is critical to keeping the government moving forward and modernizing, because we're better together, and there's enough technology out there. It's a matter of joining forces as human beings to bring our creative minds to just accelerate the government into a modern future. Thanks.
Yeah, Juliana, collecting that data like Splunk is very important. The concept I have is doing things dynamically, right? Having that dynamic risk score, because things can change. Right now I like to equate, when I go to the multiplex movie theater, where are they taking your ticket? They're taking it in the lobby. I can walk in any of the 12 movie theaters that I want. Nobody's at the doors. I need to put people at the doors so that I'm going into the right movie, and I'm not going into other data sources that I'm not supposed to be going, because I only paid to go into that one data source. So ongoing authentication, ongoing access is very important. Changing the way we do that one-time authentication, that one-time access. Keep checking it, doing a dynamic fashion. All the other factors I think is really important. One thing I think people need to know is, what is it they own? All the SaaS, especially, they have a lot of good features if you get the right licenses and things like that, because they have these complex licensing sometimes where, oh, you didn't buy that one. Well, if you want that, you got to get this. But know what you have and take advantage of it. But then understand your gaps. To use a term from one company, there's these things, this hype cycle of third-party SaaS monitoring that's coming up, and there's going to be some growing immersions in some other products to fill some of those gaps that the SaaS doesn't directly provide. But understand what your SaaS providers have available. Can you extract that information? Logs are in 2 different places, and one that I know about. Can you get those logs? Can you understand those logs? Do you have the right features turned on? Do you have the right features in your licensing? If not, do you need them? Are there third parties? There's also other things that can test against, like take the 853 controls. They have a template, and they can go across your AWS or your Azure environment and tell your systems there, did you pass or fail any of these? There's another one that will take the 853 and test the effectiveness of each of your controls and tell you if you passed or failed, to tell you how effective you were at putting those controls in place. So there's a lot of those things that people might want to be looking at, and doing things like that get you towards ongoing authorization, rather than doing it like when you do a change or having to do it every 3 years to renew your system. Move towards ongoing authorization with this dynamic risk scoring and these checks of those controls and their effectiveness. And then you're not going through that paperwork drill every time. And you're testing also your provider to make sure if they're supposed to be FedRAMP compliant, you want to make sure that they are doing their due diligence too. And while they are doing their due diligence, let's say you are responsible for a portion of configuration in SaaS. You need to understand that, because if you don't configure yourself right in SaaS, well, who cares if they're FedRAMP or not? Because if you don't do your job, that FedRAMP is no good, because the bad guys are going to get in if you don't properly configure things. Sanjay brought up, and I'm a big advocate and talk about it all the time, conditional access policies. You got to know how to configure them. If you don't do that, and you don't do your job, then I don't care if they're FedRAMPed anymore. because you just let them in, because you didn't put the conditional access policies. You didn't do MFA for 100% of your users, kinds of things like that. So know what you got, understand your gaps, do those things, conditional access policies, and move towards a dynamic risk scoring concept or policy, or some people call it a policy engine, but there's a risk. There's a risk if I come from an on-prem known network. There's a risk if I come from a BYOD device. Some of those devices we don't want that people have at all because of where they're made or something, because of the federal government mandate. So a lot of factors to take in. So understand a lot of those things.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a really good place for us to wrap it up then. Thank you guys so much. This has been such an awesome panel discussion. We've had some really great content to come out of it. So unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today. I feel like this summit flew by. Thank you to our panelists for their really great insight and this fun conversation. I want to thank everyone who joined us today. Thank you to all of our amazing panelists and our fabulous keynote speaker, Paul Puckett. I would also like to thank our partners again. So thank you to our partners at Snowflake, Pure Storage, Microfocus Government Solutions, Denodo, Acquia, Red Hat, and Splunk. As always, we really enjoy working with you all. And if you would like to continue this collaboration and continue with these conversations, a really great way to get involved is by joining our working groups. We have quite a few working group project team chairs on our panels today, like Jerry and Tom Santucci from earlier and Adam. So yeah, get involved, reach out to me or ATARC. You can just email me directly and I'll get you set up with the project team that is right for you. I know we've got our Zero Trust one that's kicking off right now. So yeah, really exciting stuff happening. And before we close out today, I would also like to share an event that we have going on next week. On Tuesday, February 9th, from 1:30 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, ATARC will be co-hosting a digital transformation summit with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. This event brings together members from across the NRC IT space to discuss the agency's digital transformation initiatives. So please go online and register to attend that summit. We really look forward to seeing you all there. Thanks again for joining, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day and rest of their week.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you
very
guys.
much.
Thank you. Bye.